Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something pretty unique. It's quite provocative source material. We've got excerpts from a guide called Marrying a Pakistani Man, a guide to submission. Now, this isn't, your standard marriage advice. Not at all. It paints a very, very stark picture from one particular viewpoint. Our mission today is just to unpack what this guide actually outlines. We're not adding anything else, just focusing on the text itself. Okay, let's get into it.
Yeah, what's really striking here is just how direct it is, the tone, and the specific, often quite extreme expectations it details. So our goal is simply to walk you through the key points as presented in this guide, understanding the dynamics, the roles it describes, without bringing in our own interpretations or outside info. It's really about distilling the core message of this specific perspective.
Exactly. So prepare yourself. There are some, surprising claims ahead as we dive into this very particular narrative of married life. All right, first up, the guide dives right into the mother-in-law, Ami Jan. Initially, she's kind of framed as this idolized queen of the domestic domain. Sounds nice, right? But the description flips fast. Calls her a monster-in-law. And here's where it gets really interesting, her supposed duties.
Oh, yeah, the duties. It says they include things like lovingly criticizing you in front of your husband.
Right. And taunting you with scathing remarks while your husband is not around.
And even, get this, haunting you in the middle of the night, even in the privacy of your own bedroom.
It's quite the image. The guide says she's unforgiving for even tiny mistakes.
And that she actually enjoys watching the wife, quote, squirm in your chair, embarrassed.
So what about making changes in the home? Does the wife have any say, according to this guide?
Apparently not. The guide is explicit. She won't allow any changes, even if she says things like, oh, you're just like my daughter.
Not even the brand of tea. Seems small, though.
Nope. The reason given. Simply, well, that has been the tea brand in the house for years.
And it goes further, doesn't it, saying even after she passes away?
Yeah, the guide claims the husband will insist on that same tea brand because, well, it reminds him of her. It really paints a picture of unchanging tradition dictated by her.
So it's all about hierarchy and control, then, within the home.
Exactly. The guide adds, the mother-in-law holds this divine right to tell you exactly what she thinks of your relationship with her son, who is, remember, her son first.
And she offers unsolicited advice,
Which the guide calls part and parcel of the legacy of being a Pakistani mother-in-law. It's presented as just, the way things are.
And the guide's summary of this whole dynamic.
It's chilling, really. Your misery is her delight. Your win is her war.
Wow. Okay, so moving on from the mother-in-law, what about the husband himself? The guide shifts focus there next.
Yes, and it's just as direct. Quote, you must compromise on everything. Your husband will not, but you must.
No ambiguity there. You must compromise. He won't.
And if you don't, if the wife somehow lets the husband feel unhappy,
What happens then, according to the guide?
well, it says he'll get blinded by the pain of the unfair pressure. His words, supposedly.
Fair pressure on him.
And then he'll be left with no choice but to divorce you. It introduces this very specific, very stark consequence.
And the method of divorce is also detailed, isn't it?
Very specifically. Possibly via a text saying, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you.
Just like that, a text.
The guide says, and ta-da, you're divorced.
So, what this points to is a system with basically zero room for the wife to disagree or push back, according to this text.
It portrays an extreme power imbalance, definitely. The threat of instant unilateral divorce looms large.
Okay, let's talk about dowry. The guide brings this up as a prerequisite for marriage to this highly eligible bachelor.
Yes, and it's quite sarcastic in tone here. It says you impress him not with looks or charm, but with a long list of wants, the dowry list.
And this pauper prince, as the guide calls him, what does he expect?
Well, the list includes things like air conditioners, refrigerators, kitchen stuff, cars, motorbikes.
Wait, it adds possibly even your nightie. Seriously.
Yeah, that's what the text says. And then it adds, Riley, apparently they never had any of those things before His Highness met you.
It's dripping with sarcasm. But the underlying point about dowry demands seems serious.
Extremely serious. The guide connects it back to the bigger picture, emphasizing these aren't just suggestions. It says there can and have been huge fights over dowry.
And it includes a really shocking detail here about potential consequences.
It does. It states, sometimes in a rage of greed, they burn you or even kill you for not bringing that last toothpick left in your house.
Burn you or kill you over dowry items.
It's presented as a potential horrific reality within the framework of this guide. It elevates the financial demands to, well, a life or death issue for the wife.
Okay, let's shift to living arrangements. The guide mentions the joint family system.
It lays it out. You will have to live with over a dozen other people in a small, cramped house.
Over a dozen. Who all does that include?
His parents, naturally, plus maybe 3 other brothers and their families, all under one roof.
And the husband. Any chance of moving out? Just the couple?
The guide is blunt. No.
Ah.
He's described as a mama's boy who will never leave his beloved mummy to live with you in a separate house.
So what does this mean for privacy with all those people?
That's a huge point the guide makes. Basically, forget about it. It says everyone wants to know what's the latest with your relationship.
Everyone.
Everyone. And you will have to tell everyone what, why, when, and how, because after all, they are family, and you must not hide anything from them.
So no secrets, no personal space.
The guide's conclusion on privacy is stark. I am sorry, I do not believe he has ever heard of it or knows the meaning of that word. It depicts complete lack of individual boundaries.
This theme continues with the wife's personal freedom, her autonomy, social life, for instance.
Yeah, very restricted, according to the guide. Example, you want to meet an old college friend. Okay, but he's a boy. Don't you dare step out that door.
Wow. Just like that. Don't you dare.
The guide states plainly, you will be his property, and he won't allow you to hang out with male friends. Why? Because, quote, only immodest girls do that.
And what if you push back, ask to go out anyway, maybe see a movie with friends?
The guide warns that pestering him about it, well, it could get ugly.
How ugly.
It may result in him calling you all sorts of names, from dogs and cats to mothers and fathers.
Just verbal abuse, then.
Or the alternative is he will go crying to his mother.
Go crying to his mother, okay.
And this whole little tete-a-tete, as the guide calls it, could then lead right back to him texting you.
Let me guess.
Do you want a divorce? Do you want a divorce? Do you want a divorce? That thread again.
It seems to be the go-to response for any perceived challenge to his authority based on this guide.
It's certainly the impression the guide gives.
What about decisions regarding children? Family planning?
Again, the guide is unequivocal. The wife will not have a say.
Not have a say at all.
Nope. It states, your body is his asset now. The husband will decide everything, starting from when you will have babies to how many you will have.
That's incredibly controlling.
It even adds, kind of chillingly, if he could, he would program you into delivering his choice of gender too.
Good grief. And childcare. Once the baby arrives, is it shared?
Shared. Not according to this guide. You might think the baby is yours too, right?
Of course.
Well, the guide says it's your baby only when it comes to bathing, cooking, cleaning, teaching, and putting it to sleep.
So all the hard work, basically.
Pretty much. All other times. The father's the big daddy.
And you shouldn't expect help with, say, changing diapers.
Definitely not. The guide says he's doing enough favors paying for the child's education and well-being and changing diapers. That's dismissed as a lowly job meant only for wives to do.
So very rigid, traditional roles pushed to an extreme here.
Extremely rigid. And it extends beyond tasks into just how you act, your personality.
How so?
The guide insists you will be expected to act in a proper and dignified manner at all times. And you must kill the child inside you.
Kill the child inside you? What does that mean?
It seems to mean suppressing any spontaneity or casualness. You cannot be seen roaming about the house in your pajamas or just relaxing, even if the house is empty.
Even if it's empty. Why?
Because, the guide says, it is disrespectful to the ghosts living in the house.
Ghosts? Okay, so essentially a complete loss of your previous self.
That's exactly the point. The guide anticipates the objection. You've always been like this, and he knew you before he married you.
Yeah, what about that?
The guide's answer. Well, tough luck, sister. That was then, and this is now. Stop being yourself. It was cute then. He can't stand it now.
Stop being yourself. It's incredibly direct.
It leaves no room for individuality, as described here. It's about conforming entirely to a prescribed role.
Let's touch on finances and property. What does the guide say about the wife's share?
Very little, it seems. It states, you will not have a share in your husband's property while his parents are alive.
So you have to wait until they pass away.
Yes. You will have to wait until they expire. And then it adds, rather darkly, with your luck, they might just outlive you.
Oof. So potentially no share, ever. And what about day-to-day work? Household chores.
Oh, that's crystal clear, too. You must do all the household chores yourself.
All of them. No help from the husband.
Zero help expected. The guide claims helping you will hurt his masculinity and ego.
His masculinity, right?
It emphasizes it is your absolute duty to make sure the house is well looked after and that his mother does not have to move an inch.
So you're basically looking after the house for the mother-in-law.
The guide puts it very bluntly. You are not married to become his wife. You are just his mother's assistant.
Just his mother's assistant. Wow.
It really frames the marriage not as a partnership, but as fulfilling a service role.
Okay, so we're nearing the end of the excerpts. What's the ultimate rule? The final takeaway from the guide.
It boils down to this. You must not do anything to offend him.
Anything? Like what?
Well, examples given include not suspecting him of having affairs, not telling him he has bad breath,
Bad breath. You can't even mention that.
or that he snores. Anything potentially critical or offensive to him is forbidden.
And the consequence for speaking out, even about snoring.
You guessed it. He will threaten you with divorce every time you dare to speak out. That constant threat again.
So the guide concludes with some final advice for anyone still considering this path after reading all that.
Yes. And it's perhaps the most telling line of all. It says, it would be best to think of yourself as his puppet.
His puppet.
Let him do whatever he wants. Do not speak without his permission. Do not react without his permission. In fact, do not breathe without his permission, and you will be fine.
Do not breathe without his permission.
And then it adds a final, almost uncertain, I think.
I think
Yeah.
that encapsulates the whole tone, doesn't it? This extreme submission is the only path to being fine, maybe.
It perfectly summarizes the guide's overall message of complete and total submission across every conceivable aspect of life.
So looking back at everything we've covered,
Correct.
what does this all mean? I mean, our deep dive today really focused on this one very specific, incredibly direct guide.
Yeah.
It laid out a narrative of near total submission for the wife, didn't it? Packed with strict rules, clear power dynamics, almost no room for her own agency or voice.
Absolutely. And it's crucial to remember this source offers one singular, highly critical perspective. It really highlights the extreme end of the spectrum regarding described expectations and gender roles.
Right, it's one viewpoint.
But as a viewpoint, it's a powerful illustration of how traditional structures, or at least a particular interpretation of them, and the individual's place within those structures can be presented. The guide itself depicts this system of unilateral control quite vividly.
So, for you, our listener, maybe here's something to think about. How does a guide like this, and remember, we're just reporting on its contents, how does its existence, its explicit instructions for submission, its stark warnings, how might that influence real-world perceptions? Perceptions of choice, of personal identity, of what a partnership even means in marriage.
Mm-hmm. And maybe also what can we learn about the sheer impact of certain cultural or familial narratives when they're presented in such an uncompromising, absolute way, like we see in this guide.
Some heavy thoughts to ponder there. We'll leave you with that.